today we will start our lectures by announcing that one of the critical evaluations for your core course will be on October 11. So October 11 is Friday. You already registered on morning sessions and evening sessions, so please attend the session that you are enrolled with, because we have labs are full in terms of number of students and number of PC. So we have 48 machines, 48 students. So only students enrolled on section number 1 gonna write the exam on Williams Small Centers 106. So if you register on section number 3, you have to write your exam on lesson 1002. Okay, so in terms of weight for the lab test 1, the weight will be 30% from the total weight. You have 20% or 20 points for the labs assignments, D1 up to D5, and you have 30 points on lab test 1. Now, in terms of the materials and the contents and the topic, we will have all the topics covered in lecture 1, 2, 3, up to 4. Today lecture is not included. And also from the textbook, we have chapter 0, 1, and 2. When I say chapter 0, I mean D0, L0, and D1, L1, D2, L2. So the doing part and learning part. The exam will start at 10 on sharp, will end at 12. Now, if you came late, you lose the time. There's no exception to give you extra time, because we also have another lab scheduled after us immediately. So you, for example, for any reason, you will not attend the lab, you have to make sure this reason is valid, not by talking to me. You have to make sure this reason is a valid reason, okay, approved by the department. So if it's approved and this is a good reason, then we can think about make up the exam. If this is not a valid reason, you miss 30% from the weight, so you got 0. Any questions before I go to the next topic? Yes? Can you speak? After 12, you are free to leave. No. Sorry, 10, 12, we give you some questions related to 10, 12. That's to see how much from previous courses you carry with you to this course, okay? But on the lab test 1, all the questions will be related to 1022. Materials we cover in lecture 1, 2, 3, and 4, textbook from chapter 0 up to chapter number 3. There's no questions from outside or any questions related to 1012. Still today, we're gonna cover loops and if statement. This topic is not included, okay? Any other questions? Yes? Yes, it will be similar to the demo. So you have a multiple choice question. You have short answer questions where with just one line, give me your answer. And there is a programming questions. You have to write a code, okay? Yes, you will be able to see Java APIs and also the API related to the I2C Java files. Yes. Yes. No, you cannot switch lab sessions. So if you are registered in the morning, I just announced, if you register in the morning, please attend the morning one, because we have limited number of students. So the number of students enrolled On the evening part is full. A number of students in the morning is full. You're risking your time. Maybe there's no computer for you to. So for example, if you miss the morning and you say, okay, no problem, I will attend the afternoon at evening, you may show up, but I told you I don't have any machine for you. Sorry, okay? And at that time, you have to give me a good reason, not because if you are thinking that, oh, TTC bus is not working, that's not a good reason. You have to take the measurement that I have to go from home 30 minutes early, so that is the time. So you have experience now. We have been going in this semester for more than 1 month. So you know exactly the transportation, how it's work, everything. So be ready, make the alarm, write that in your calendars. So be ready in the morning and also in the evening. Any other questions? Okay, so we close the lab test 1 and we will start our lectures number 5. We start our lectures by giving a hint on Android Studio how we toss a message. So we need you in D3 to do this. So I prepared this slide. So it's toss a message is like you communicate with the user. Normally we know that test view is allow you to display something to the user, like what you did on calculations. You calculate some values in BMI app and you communicate the user by updating the text view text. So you send the message back to the text view. What about if you want to send a message that is pop up on the top of the views and still the views is visible to the user where he can interact? So tossing a message is one of the things that we can cover today, is allow us to make an object of tossing a message by calling make a text. And there's 3 things that we have to provide: the application context and also the text message and the duration of this message. They are short and longer durations for this message. This is an example how you can prepare all the necessary 3 parameters and send them to the toss message. So you prepare the string, you define a string, text and hello tossed, and int duration, toss.long, length short, there is a length long also, and you create an object. Now we come to the creation of the objects. So the declaration type is tossed, the name of the variable is tossed with T small, then toss.make a tossed, and then you give this reference to the application context, and also you give the text message and also the duration, and to make this visible to the user, you ask toss.show. Now, I create this app for you just to see how we can create a short and long toss message. So this is just 2 buttons on the screen. This is the user interface. So you have a short toss and long toss. When you press the short toss, you will see a short toss message. And if you press a long, you will see a long message. This is the XML file that related to this user API. We said that we can build the user interface either using drag and drops or by typing the XML tag and format. And we're going to see later on this course how we can build the user interface and interact with the user interface using Java code. Okay? Now, as you can see, I would like you to make sure that whenever you define any user items, you have to give the ID because you need to interact with this user interface items. So we need a unique ID. In this case, we have a button short as an ID. We give on click. So when the user click this buttons, we're going to fire or go to a Java subroutines called on click of short tossed buttons. And what is the text on the top of it is short tossed. And also the text style is bold. So you can read, you can have some idea about how its user interface looking like if I did not see this user interface, only I see this text XML file, I have some kind of ideas how the user interface look like. So I know that we have a buttons and the ID of these buttons. I know what is written on the top of it. I know which method I'm going to call. Okay, I know that the text is written on this. It's a bold style. Just to give you a hint. Also, I can dig deep. I can know that this is a layout constraint to the parent from left and right, okay? And also wrap the contents of it. This is another button, it's button long, and also you can see the tags that define the properties of these buttons also. This is the Java code. You can see we have a class, and this class is a main activity, extend app, compact activity. And in this code, one very important method is onCreate. We didn't talk about it, but this method is very important. Whenever we are running an app, the first time we're gonna go to onCreate to load all the necessary resources. And we're gonna call super.onCreate, that means we're gonna call the super class, but this is not a topic of this course. I want you to focus on this method, onClick short toast. As you can see, we define the text here, and then we define the duration as a short durations. And as you can see, we create a toast app, object by making toast.makeAText. We give this text and the durations, and we toast.show to show the message to the user. So these three parameters is necessary to create a toast message. This referring to the object is being created in this application. So you are referring to the same applications that you are creating apps, and you give a text and you give the durations for the message. The difference between the one short and the one long is the durations. The length short, the value is integer, is equal to 0, and the length for long, the value is 1. Now, you can see you can change this value. You can override this value and change this value to put it in second. For example, I need this message to be 1 second, 1.5 seconds to be appear. This application, I think this is a video, where you can see the demo. If we press the short toast, you can see on the bottom of the screen, you will see a message. Okay, this message is telling the user some information you need to communicate with the user. We ask you in the D3 to give a warning to the student or to the user that this value is wrong, okay, whenever you need to enter some value. So this is a short and long toast. Another issue here is about the positioning of this message. You want this message to appear on the bottom of the screen or on the top of the screen, on the middle of the screen, where you can position your toast message. This is set a gravity, and you give a 3 parameters. A 3 parameter of type int. This is the signature of set a gravity. The name of the method and the list of parameter type. So all of them is int. You can see on this example, I decide to make a different positions for my message. I need the first one to be on the top, then I put it on the top, but then I decide, okay, top to the left. That's the first short message. In terms of this long message, I need it to be on the center of the screen, but also there is a left, right on the center too. So I give an OR. This is an OR here between the gravity flags. So I need it to be in the center, and also to the left. I need it to the top, also on the left. So if I run the demo, you can see now the position of the message is in the top of the app, and if I click the long, it will be on the center to the left. Any question? Yeah, you can do this by overriding the parameter of durations, okay? You can define a duration that you like, and you send it inside the third parameter. Right now, we are relying on a predefined value, show length underscore short. This is a constant, is defined inside the class toast, and the value of it is 0. And it will understand from this value, that's the short message, okay? Long message, you can define the value that you like, but remember that you are defining it on seconds, and you give it to that parameter. You try it and you will see. Okay? The only thing you will see changes here in the durations. The parameter duration should be an integer, and you give the value that you like. Okay? Any question? This is just a brief for Android Studio how you can toss a message, and this is needed for D3. Okay, so now we will start our main Java discussion. Last time we discussed object on Java, basic object on Java, constructors, how we create the objects, and we say that constructor is very important for us because it's responsible to create an object and also initialize the data fields on an appropriate state based on the developer requirement. Now we have a method inside the class that represents the behavior, how we can interact with the data fields inside the class. And we end with some summary and review about the Java fundamentals. Today we're going to go over many topics. Actually, we're going to go over the control structures that control the execution of your apps, and also we're going to see how we can compare the data types. We know that now we have a primitive data type inside Java, and we have what we call non-primitive data type inside Java, which is related to the objects that we create. And also we're going to see how we can generate a random variables, random value. If someone asks us to generate a random value between 0 and 10, an integer value or a double value, how we can do this. And then we're going to discuss about exceptions. Very useful way to catch some kind of unusual mistakes or unusual event happened inside the programs, and maybe we print some messages to let the user be aware of this kind of exceptions. Finally, we hope we can discuss some information about arrays. We define arrays. The good way to understand most of this topic is by examples. By seeing the examples, we learn from this example. So I prepared many examples for you today to show you how the if statement is work, how if else statement is work, how while loop, how for loop is working. So learning by example is one of the powerful tools. Okay, we're gonna use it today. Before we're gonna define what we call as an algorithm, is a series of actions in a specific order. So you decide to do some kind of algorithm. Even each of us have some kind of algorithm in the morning. You wake up in the morning, you do some kind of actions to prepare yourself to go outside from home. The same thing, whenever you come across some programming problem, you have to approach it in an algorithm way by listing some actions, and you need to execute these actions in a certain order to solve the problem. Now, the program control specifies the order of execution. After you list all the action is necessary to solve a problem. Let's say you are solving a problem of calculating the average of an array. I need to sort a list of actions. One action, I need to read the element from the array. I need to keep reading the element until the last element of the array. I need to add these elements together. Then I need to make a divisions by the total number of element inside the array to calculate the average. Then I have to print the average to the screen. Okay? So all of these is an actions. The program control that you are implement is gonna specify in which directions, in which order these statement will be executed. One of these is a control structure, sequential structure. Are you going to execute statement 1, then after statement 2, 3 in order, sequential order, or you want to transfer the control to some other statement that where we're going to see selection structures and repetition structures. So sequential structure is related to execute the statements in order. As you type the statements, it will be executed. Statement 1, after you finish executing statement 1, you're going to go to statement 2 to execute statement 2. Now, once the statement 2 is finished, you're going to go to statement 3. If there any problem in the execution for statement 2, then you will raise an exception or an error is coming to your screen. You will not reaching statement number 3. Now, we're going to see later on in these lectures that we can handle this issue by raising an exception or handling this error, and we still go to statement number 3. Or we can have the selection criteria where if some condition is true, I'm going to go to select statement number 1. If this condition is false, I'm going to go to statement 2. Then the direction will be merged at the end and the program will be executed. So the default execution for any Java program is a sequential. That is the default execution. The execution of Java program will start from statement number 1, 2, 3 until the end of the program. Unless if there is no error. If there is an error appear, then the execution will be different. But you can use the selection execution to decide based on some kind of conditions. So the sequential execution I discussed with you is the default one. You can have this diagram, add the grade to the total, add 1 to the counter. As you can see, we have the total is equal to total plus the grade, and then we increment the counter. So you write the Java statement next to each other, and they will be executed as sequentially. Now, one of the things that we're going to cover today is if statement, if else statement, as switch statement, as a control structures, 3 selection structures, and also we're going to cover 3 repetitive structures. And these repetition structures are while, do while loop, and also for loops. Now, if else, switch, while, do while, and for are all these keywords inside Java. We cannot define a variable called while. Okay? We'll start with if selection statement. If selection statement is single entry point and single exit point, and it's perform an action only if the condition is equal to true. An example of this, or the syntax of the if statement, is if the condition, and we have to put the condition between the brackets, between the parentheses. You have to. You cannot leave the condition without the parentheses. You're going to put the condition between the parentheses and you put the statement. So if is a keyword, then this is the conditions, and it should be enclosed by the parentheses and the statement. This is the statement. If the condition is true, you evaluate the condition and this end up as a true, the statement will be executed. Otherwise, the statement will be skipped. So a single entry point, the condition is evaluated. If the condition is true, we're going to execute the statement. If the condition is false, I'm going to skip the statement. So this is one of the selections. Here is an example. You have if student grade is greater than or equal to 60, we're going to print pass. Otherwise, we're going to print, I don't know what otherwise, but we're going to skip this statement right now. So if the condition is evaluated, a grade is greater than or equal to 60, we're going to print the message. If the grade is less than 60, is the complement of greater than or equal is less than. If the grade is less than 60, we're going to skip the statement. Now, if you have multiple statements, you need to execute multiple statements. If the condition or Boolean expression is true, then you have to put them inside the braces. You have to put them inside the braces. Left and right braces enclose them. So inside the block of execution, you have to open the brace and close it, and all the statement from 1 up to n will be executed if and only if the Boolean expression is true. If the Boolean expression is false, all this part of statements from statement 1 up to statement n will be ignored. Before I proceed, as you can see in the previous example, we are using this greater than or equal, and we say the complement of a greater than or equal is less than, not less than or equal. That's the complement of greater than or equal is less than. It's very important to know what's the complement of the condition, what makes the condition false if we are running a statement or if a statement. So I'm give you now an introduction or a quick introductions about your previous knowledge about logic operators. We need this logic operator even for the for loop and while loop. So the logic operator is allow us to perform one or maybe more complex conditions together. We can combine a simple conditions like greater than or equal 60. We can combine it with something else using the logic operators. That is what's the benefit of it. So we have, let's say, the famous logic operator here. We have and, or, exclusive or, and negation. To understand these, I give you this truth table. So if you have a Boolean expression 1 and a Boolean expression 2, and you need to make an and between them, you need to use these notations, and, at 2 times. Then, whenever the conditions are true, both are true, the result will be true, otherwise the result is false. This is the truth table for and. Also, we have the truth table for the or. You need the 2 vertical bars here. You have a expression 1 and expression 2, and the or between 2 expressions is true whenever one of them is true or both of them is true. If both of them is false, the result is false. Did you see the difference between and or? Any question? Okay. Exclusive or is different. It's only true if one of them is true. If both are false, the result is false, and if both of them are true, the result is false. So only true if one of them is true. Negation is different, is a complement of whatever state you are. So if you are in the state of true, the complement or negation for the true is false. If you are in the state of false, the negation of it is true. Now this is an example where we add 2 expressions together. Now, we said that whenever you are using the if statement, you have to put these braces, not the braces, what are these? Brackets. We have to use these brackets. So now in individual one, you have the option either to put that or you leave it. In this scenario, if I is greater than or equal to 0 and I is less than or equal to 10, we will print this message. Otherwise, we skip it. Now, by looking to these conditions, 0 is included or excluded. If I is equal to 0, we're going to execute this statement? Yes? If I is 10, we're going to execute this statement or not? We're going to execute this statement. Now, if I is equal to 11, we're going to execute. As long as we have a I is equal to 0 or any number less than or equal to 10, we're going to execute. This is how we are making more complex Boolean expressions. Yes? 0? No, this is not this is if statement. This is if statement, not a for loop. So whenever I is coming somewhere before this statement, so I don't know what is before this statement is. So when I reach this statement, I will look for I. If the value stored in I is greater than or equal to 0, less than or equal to 10, I will execute this statement. Otherwise, I will skip this statement. Okay? So this statement is part of the big problem or big program. We are checking the value for I. If I is greater than or equal to 0 and I less than or equal to 10. All the example today, you can assume this statement that I'm going to show in this slide is part of the big problem. Okay? So this is the Boolean values for I, then another Boolean expressions, and we evaluate both of them to retain one Boolean value. If statement will execute if both conditions are true. Now we go to if-else statements. If-else statement, we have some statement will be executed if the condition is true, and we have some other statement we need to execute it if the condition is false. So we have two paths. And we have also a conditional operator we're going to discuss about it, which is a question mark with a colons. That is works similar to if-else statement. So else clause is added to the end of if statement, is make it if-else statement. So you have if, then you have the parentheses, that is conditions. You have a statement number one, and you add to the end of it else as a keyword, then you add statement two. Now, if the condition is evaluated to true, you're going to go to statement number one and execute it. If the condition is evaluated to false, you're going to go to statement number two. So if the condition is a true, we're going to execute statement number one. If the condition is false, we're going to execute statement number two. Now, one most important thing. One of these statements will be executed, not both of them. You cannot say, oh, I will execute statement number one, then I will execute statement number two. That is what I need. Then you have to go to sequential. Don't use if statement. When you put statement number one and statement number two in if-else statement, inside if-else, that means one of these statements will be executed for sure. One of them, not both. So we have a single point here. We enter to evaluate the conditions. Then if the condition is true, we're going to execute the statement number one. If the condition is false, we're going to go and execute statement number two. Then back the execution together and continue to execute our programs. So as you can see here, we have the if-else statements. And we have the braces to include them. It's not required in this scenario because only one statement here. If we have more statement, this will be required for our case. So if student grade is greater than 60, we're going to print pass. Else, that means the condition is evaluated as a false, we're going to print failed. So this is the diagram. You go to the left if the student is failed, that means the grade is less than 60, and you go to the right if the student is pass or the condition is evaluated to true. Now, if you have a list of statement, you need to execute this list of statement if the condition is true. As you can see here in this slide, if radius is greater than or equal to 0, I have to do some calculations. I have to do calculation for the area, then I have to print some statements. So I have two statements, I need to execute them if the condition is true. In this case, I have to put them inside the braces. I have to open one brace and the curly brackets between the left and right. Else, we have only one statement. If there is only one statement, you don't need to put the braces for that statement. In case of else, that means the radius is less than 0. You don't need the braces. Any question? So everybody know when you need to use this braces here, open and close, okay? And when you don't need that, okay? Any question? Okay. So here is the, I can say, systematic view for if. So you have a Boolean expression, you have a statement for true, if the condition is true, and you have else some other statement if the condition is false. And remember, you need the braces to close and open to indicate statement that are going to be executed if the condition is true. Now, a conditional operator, which is a question mark with a colon, it works similar to if-else statement, but this is like a quick and one short line. You can't write that. So if the student grade is greater than or equal to 60, you put a question mark. That means this is my conditions. If this condition is true, I'm going to make it pass. If the condition is fail or the condition is false, I'm going to say fail. And you can see I put everything inside one statement, which is the print line to the user. So if we have, if x is greater than 0, we need to assign y to equal to 1. Else, we need to assign y to equal -1. We can make an equivalent conditional operator using a question mark with colon. So how the equivalent is work? It's mapping. We need to assign y. That means y to the left, y is equal. If x, that is the test. If x is greater than 0, this is the condition. You ask a question, this is if statement. Then if it's true, we're going to have y is equal to 1. If it's false, we're going to have y is equal to 1. Now this is just this slide. I show you how you map between if statement to conditional operator. And if I give you the conditional operator, I believe you can put also the if statement. Any question? Yes. This topic will be part of lab test 2. Yeah, maybe. Yes. Without? Without true. I think it's a conditional operator. I didn't try it, but I use this conditional operators, question mark with colon, whenever I have if-else statement. If I have if statement, I didn't know, but it's used to be if-else. So you have to know if the condition is evaluated as true, what you should assign. If the condition is evaluated to false, what you should assign. You can try it, but I believe it's only for if-else. Okay? Any other question? Okay. Now, you can see this is a nested if statement. You can put if statement inside if statements. So you can start by saying, okay, if the student's grade is greater than or equal to 90, I will do some actions. Else, that means the first else statement, all these else belong to this if statement. The else here, it's going to be whenever is the grade is less than 90. Then inside the else, I will ask another question. The another question is saying, if the student's grade is greater than 80, I will do something. Again, we have else. So you can see what is the else here. This else asking the complement of this if statement. So this else belongs to this if statement. What's the complement of this condition? Is whenever the grade for the students is less than 90. If I go randomly to this one, this else statement is belong to this if statement. We evaluate whenever the grade is less than 80. This is kind of nested if statement. You need it in your Java programming sometimes. Okay? Any question? Okay. Now we will postpone the discussion for switch statement to the later on, and we will go to the repetitive statement. Repetition statements, that is related to for loop. You need to do some actions, but you need to repeat this action for a certain period of time. Okay? For a certain period of counter, for example, you need to repeat the same actions. You don't need to copy-paste the same Java statements all over in your program to repeat the same action. No, I need to write it only once, but I need some kind of mechanism to let the Java compiler understand this kind of action, I need to repeat it a certain amount of time. Okay? Good? So we have while, we have do while statements, and we have for loop. While repetition, you say, I need to repeat an action as long as the condition is true. Once the condition is evaluated to be false, I will get out from the loop. You are inside the while loop as long as the condition is true. Once the condition is evaluated to false, you get out from the loop. Let us see. This is an example. As long as the product is less than or equal to 1,000, I need to repeat this action. What is the action that you are asking for? A product equal 2 times the product. You see that? I'm checking the product, and inside the while loop, I'm modifying also the product value. That is okay. So, I start with some value for the product. As again, I'm repeating this. What you see here in this slide, you can assume it's a part of a big Java program. Okay? So I just take a part of it and display it here for you in this slide. So the product is defined and declared before. So we have the value for a product. We check the value for the product. If the value for the product is less than or equal to 1,000, we're going to keep repeating this action. What kind of action? A product is equal to 2 times products. So this is like a systematic program. You merge the execution. You check the value for the product. If the value for the product less than or equal to 1,000, you can double the product value. You're going to retain back and execute, keep execution. Else, you have to go outside the loop. Now, by looking to this example and with a brief explanation for the while loop, you see I start by declaring int count is equal to 0. So we start asking the counter to be equal to 0. Then we start the while loop. While, and we have a condition between the parentheses. What's the condition is saying? Is the count is less than 4? What's the value for count right now? 0. 0 less than 4, that's true. That means we're going to execute the statement inside the while loop. The statement is saying print welcome to Java plus count. That's a concatenation between 2 strings in this case. And then we increment the value for count. What do you think the output of this piece of Java program? How many times, let me ask these questions. We know that we're going to repeat printing this statement. How many times this statement will be printed out? Yes? That's right. So the first statement will be printed. Java is equal to 0. When count is equal to 0, that's the first statement. We increment the counter to 1. We back again to the condition because this is a while loop. We evaluate the condition. 1 less than 4, that's true. Then we're going to print again. Then we have a counter incremented. Then we have 2. 2 less than 4, that's true. We're going to print. 3. 3 less than 4, we're going to print. Then we have a value 4. The question is, 4 is less than 4? No, 4 is equal to 4. Most of the students get confused here. 4 is not less than 4. 4 is equal to 4. So the condition is evaluated to be false. We're going to get out from the loop. Any question? Okay. Now, how many times do you think this will be printed? So we start by initializing number to be equal to 1. As you can see, in this example and the previous example, there is a loop controls. Who is the controlling the amount of number of times here? Which variable? Number. So number is controlling the number. I keep updating it because I need my system or my program to be executed not through infinite loop. So if I remove the last statement, the loop will be executed for infinite amount of time and Java will halt in your machine. So as you can see, I will check if the number is less than or equal to 200. If that's true, I'm going to print something, the value for the number. Otherwise, I will go out from the loop. If the condition is true, I will double. So what's the first thing I will print? Let me ask this. 1 or 2? 1. Because the increment or this statement, the order of execution inside the while loop is sequential. I cannot jump to the second one. I will start executing this print number. So what's the value for number right now? It's 1. Then after running this statement, I will double the value. So any suggestion about the output? The first one will be 1. The second one, 2. So we have 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, up to 128. Now when we reach 128, we're going to multiply it by 2. That will give us how many? 256. 256 less than or equal to 200. The condition is evaluated to false. We're going to get out. And as you can see, I'm using a print, not a print line. So I'm printing them on the same line. Okay? Any question? Okay. Now we go to the for loop. For loop is very powerful one, and most of the students I found from my experience go to for loop. Why? Because it's give you the opportunity to declare the loop counters or the loop controls, in this case the counter, int. You see, inside the for loop, I say a declaration type, int counter is equal to 1, then a semicolon, counter less than or equal to 10. I give the loop continuations conditions, and then I also give the increment of the loop. So I don't need to worry about 3 things on the for loop. I'm going to put them all in one line. For counter is equal to 1, int, I declare it, and the scope of counter is within this for loop, is not continue after the for loop. As you can see here, this is very important. I can still use number outside the loop because I declare it before the loop. So the scope of it is not within the loop. But for the for loop, the counter is only live inside the for loop. Once this for loop is finished, I cannot see counter anymore. Java will destroy it immediately after the for loop. So the counter live inside the for loop. I declare it for the for loop. It will live inside it. After the finish of the for loop, there's no counters. So the counter is equal to 1. That is the initial. Pay attention to the semicolon. It's not a colon. It's a semicolon. It's like an end of statement. So counter less than or equal to 10. And counter plus plus, which is the increment. You can use advance or pre or post increment. In this case, post increment. After one iteration, we increment the counter by 1. Any question about this? It's good if you have any doubt to ask now, because you're going to use this very frequently. The for loop going to continue execution as long as this condition is true. Now, if you want to do sub-conditions, you can have another for loop inside it or another if statement. You can ask the program to execute if this condition is evaluated to true. So you stop the execution of for loop. Let's say you're going to go to repeat this 10 times. But if the counter is equal to 5, I need to stop. Okay? In this case, you can put if statement with the break statement. We're going to discuss this later on these lectures. You can go out from the for loop. You can even, within the for loop, do something to interrupt the execution of for loop. Okay? Any other questions? This is the Boolean expression. This is the Boolean expression, guarantee the continuation of if you cannot provide the counter and you just use the counter here is less than or equal to 10, you're not incrementing the counter, you're not declaring the counter, the Java will not compile your code. Okay? So I know that we're going to see this later on in this course. Some people, they use infinite loop. We're going to discuss that later on. But for the standard definition for the for loop, we need to declare int counter. That is our control. You can name it whatever you like, I, J, K. Okay? You make a condition, then you increment that. Any question? Okay. Now, if you can move from for loop to while loop, or if you are familiar with the while loop, I can show you how you can go from while loop to for loop. Or if you are familiar with the for loop, you can go to the while loop. As you can see, there is an initializations, there is a loop, continuations code, conditions, and there is an increment. In the while loop, you have to do initialization before the while loop. You have to put the loop continuation inside the braces, parentheses, and also you have to put the statement that you want to execute. And don't forget, last statement inside your loop is an increment. Because if you forget about the increment here, the loop will be executed forever. So there's a 3 piece of information is given on the for loop: initializations, loop continuations, conditions, and increment. Now, if you want to move from for loop to while loop, you need to do initialization before the while loop. You need to do the condition with the while loop, and also you need to do increment inside the body of the while loop. This is the diagram, show the execution of for loop. So you increment, you define int counter is equal to 1, you check the counter is less than or equal to 10, you execute some programs, you increment at the last iteration, the increment will be at the last statement, okay, and you go back if the condition is evaluated to true. Here is the example where we are asked to write for loop statements and make the control variables from 1 to 100 an increment of 1. So I just ask you to give me the for loop statement, just the for loop, the header of the for loop, where you have to make the control variables start from 1, end at 100. And also, we need the second part where the control variable start from 100 to 1 with decrement minus 1. The last one, I ask you to do the for loop where you start from 7 and you end at 77 with increment is equal to 7. So for the first one, we do the for loop here like this. Int I is equal to 1, semicolon, I less than or equal to 100, and we increment by 1, I plus plus. The last statement of the for loop will be increment. It will be a post increment. So the first I will value is equal to 1. You execute, then at the last statement you increment I by 1, that will become 2, and you continue the execution. So this is the header of the for loop that will give you a variable, control variable, start from 1, end at 100, with increment is equal to 1. This is a for loop where you start from 100, I as a 100, int I is equal to 100, and semicolon, as long as I is greater than or equal to 1, you decrement I. So this will give you a for loop where I is moving from 100 to 1 with decrement is equal to 1. This is a for loop, give you I, start from 7 up to 77 with increment is equal to 7. As you can see, I'm not using I plus plus or I minus minus because this will give me an increment by 1 or decrement by 1. I'm using I plus equal 7. So this is equivalent to I equal I plus 7. Okay? So I increment I by 7 each iterations. Any question? Okay. Now, as I mentioned, you can have for loop and you can translate it to an equivalent while loop by putting initialization in the front of while loop. You do the condition and you do some statement, and the last thing should be an increment of the counter. Do while loop, it's very important for some developer. They need to do the action at least one. They need to do some actions at least at one. If some condition is valid, repeat this action. If the condition is not valid, you go out. So the only difference between while loop and do while loop is do while loop give you one iteration. But while loop will not give you anything if the condition is false. So even if the condition is false, do while loop is saying, I will give you one iteration. Okay? That is the difference, the only difference between them. So it's similar to the while loop, except they have one iterations, so the body will always be executed at least one. The do while loop, the body will be executed at least one. So you execute some statement, you check the condition. If the condition is true, you're going to back again to the same action and execute it. Otherwise, you go outside. So if you compare between the while loop and the do while loop, you see the difference. The condition is coming first for the while loop. If the condition is evaluated for a true, we're going to execute this statement. We go back to the condition again. We ask the condition. If the condition is true, we're going to keep executing. If the condition is false, we're going to go out. While in the do while loop, the story is a little bit different. You're going to execute the statement first, then check the conditions. So the condition is become after the statement. So at least you guarantee that there is one iteration is executed. So the statement will be executed, then the condition will be evaluated, and if the condition is true, you're going to go back and execute the statement again. If the condition is evaluated to false, you're going to go out. Any questions about do while loop? Okay. I postponed the discussion about switch statement because the condition on the switch statement is not Boolean expression. The condition in the case of the switch statement should be integers or characters. The case 10 or case y. So there is no Boolean expression on the case of a switch statement. So it's all the previous discussion about if, else, while, do while, for loop, we have the conditions that is represented by a Boolean expression, or maybe a complex Boolean expression using and or and negations. You cannot use a Boolean value to switch between the cases of switch statements. You need the case to be either integers or characters. You cannot have the case that is evaluated as true or false. So, even if you put the case as a Boolean, it will transfer to equality inside the Java. So you have multiple cases that executed based on some case statements. So let us go to this. You have some expression, and then based on the value of this expression, okay, if the value is equal to 1, you're going to execute the statement belong to the case value 1. If the expression end up with the value, integer value, that's equal to value 2, you're going to execute the statement belong to the value 2. And you keep on like this. So the case with the value either in an integers or a characters. So this is the braces, keywords, switch and case are keywords, and this statement will be executed if the case of the value is evaluated as a value 2. So you come to the conditions. If the case A is true, you execute, and then the last statement of the case A is a break statement. That's allow you to break the execution and go out of the switch statement. Because you switch execution based on the value of the expression. So as you can see in this diagram, if the case is equal to P, then you're going to execute the statement belong to case P, and at the end you will have a break keyword with a semicolon to break the execution and go out from the switch statement. Now, the break statement is used as a last statement in each case. So whenever you put the cases for a switch, you put the break at the last statement. If you forget to put this, the computer will continue execution sequentially. Remember, because the default execution for the Java program is a sequential. Statement 1, then statement 2, statement 3. If you want to put statement 1 and 2 and 3 inside case statement, So if the case 1 is coming, you execute statement 1, case 2, statement 2, case 3, you're going to execute statement 3. You have to add a break at the end of statement 1 at each case. Otherwise, the computer will sequentially execute all the statements. This is an example where you are asking about category. Category is an integer value somewhere defined in the program. Case is equal to 10. That means if the category value is 10, I'm going to print something to the user. As you can see, at the end of each case, we have a break. That means we're going to end up with one of these cases. Now, you can see in the case number 6, we're going to go to case number 6, we're going to print the one statement, then the second statement, and after that, we have a break statement. So, both statements will be executed once we have case 6. That means category is equal to 6. The value inside the category is 6. We're going to execute 2 statements, and the last statement is the break to break out from the switch statements. You pay attention to the braces, that is begin the switch statement and end the switch statement. Now, any question about switch statement? So you can see that the nested if-else statement, if they are asking about the value of an integer, we can transfer this nested if-else statement to a switch statement. Okay? Any other question? Any question? Yes? Yes, it's defined before as an int category and I assign some value to it. If you have an array and you need to for loop inside the array, then for each element of array, you can ask these questions. You can ask a switch statement. But right now, the category is an integer value, is defined inside our program, okay? And we ask questions. If the value of the category is equal to 9, we're going to print some statement and then break. We go outside of switch statements, okay? Now, we can use a break statement and also there is a continue statement with the for loops. That can allow us to change the flow of the execution of for loop or while loop, okay? As you can see on the switch statement, we can switch from one state to another state, or we can continue execution from state 1 to state 2 if we didn't provide the break. So the break statement goes immediately to exit out of the control structures. So if you are within the loop and you provide the break statement, you get out from the loop state while loop. If you have for loop and you have a break statement, you get out from the for loop immediately. So what is the structures that you are within? It will be you get out from that structures. You break out. Continue is different. So if you are within the repetition and you provide a continue based on some condition, you skip this iteration. Let's say you are going for loop from I is equal to 1 up to I is equal to 10. And you ask a condition in the middle of the for loop body, if I is equal to 5, continue. Which means skip this iteration. Don't execute the rest of the statement if I is equal to 5, but continue within the loop. So continue is allow you to continue the for loop and skip one iteration or as much iteration as you want, okay, based on the conditions. But break will break you out from the repetition for loops. Yes? It will be executed. If you have some statement before the continue, absolutely it will be executed. Any statement after the continue will be skipped, and the iteration will be continue after that. So this is a infinite for loop. You just provide for loop. You didn't provide anything for the declarations, no conditions, no increment. You open the process and you end the braces, and you say if the Boolean expression is true, break. This is an infinite for loop. It will break out if the Boolean expression evaluated as a true. Otherwise, you will stay within the for loop. The same thing, you have while and you give a true inside the condition. You are saying I need to stay within this for loop forever. Then you have an if statement. If the Boolean expression is evaluated as a true, break out. So you break out from the infinite for loop. Any question? So as you can see in this slide, we can create an infinite for loop using for loop without declaring anything, without doing any condition, without incrementing. And also we can create an infinite loop using a while statement. So you can have infinite loop using for statement, and you can create infinite loop using while statement. Now let us see this. We have nested while loops. We initialize count 1 to be equal to 1, and we ask the condition. While count 1 is less than 10, go inside. It's good whenever you have repetitive statements or while statement or for statements to know exactly the beginning and the end of each repetition statement. So the beginning of the big for loop is this braces, and the end is here. All these statements belong to the first while loop. Now, inside the first while loop, we define count 2 to be equal to 1. We ask if count 2 less than or equal to 20. We print statement. We increment count 2, and then we exit the body of the inside while loop. We increment count 1, and we go back to the bigger while loop. How many times the string will be printed to the user? String here will be printed to the user. 200 times. How we get this number? That's right. That's 10 times 20. We're going to have 10 times 20. For each value from the outer loop, we're going to print 20 here to the screen. So in total, we have 200. Okay? Any question? Okay. Now this example, what do you think the output of this example? Here we have two nested for loops. So we have the outer for loop that start by declaring I is equal to 1, semicolon, I less than or equal to 4, and then a semicolon, I plus plus. Nested for loop inside it is int is equal to 1, semicolon, I, j is less than I. So the condition here linked between the outer for loop to the inner for loop by saying j is less than or equal to I. So once you have I from the outer loop, you use it to make a condition inside the inner for loop by saying j less than or equal to I, you increment j, you print something to screen, which is a star. At each end of the iteration for the outer loop, we print a new line. So what do you think the output for this one? It will be, yes? A triangle of stars. Yeah? The first star in the first line, because I is equal to 1. At that case, we have j is less than or equal to 1. That's true. Then we're going to print 1 star. On the last row, we have 4 stars. Okay. I leave this an exercise for you where you can have this if statement, and I need from you a switch statement equivalent to this one. So if A is equal to 1, we're going to execute some statement. If A is equal to 2, we're going to execute some other statement. It's different from if A is equal to 2, to 1. If A is equal to 4, we're going to have some other statement. We can easily transfer this to switch loop. Remember, in the switch loop, accept int and character evaluation, not a Boolean expression. You cannot say switch A and then A is equal to 1. That's not acceptable, okay? So I will leave this as an exercise for you. Now, this is an example here. What do you think the output of this example? How we can move this example from for loop to while loop? If I give you this for loop, and I ask you what is the equivalent for loop for this one, you need to make sure whenever you are working with the for loop and while loop that the declaration and initialization is correct, the condition is correct, and you have some statement to increment so you can get out from the loop. Otherwise, you're stuck inside the loop. So here we have I is equal to 1. Whenever I is less than or equal to 10, we're going to keep executing. And then we have I plus plus, which is the post increment for I. So how we can transfer this to for loop? We can have the initialization before the for loop. We have int I is equal to 1. While I is less than or equal to 10, we're going to keep executing some certain statement. We have the same statement, print line high there. And then we have the last one. This is very important. Most of the students forget about this one. This is the increment of the counter. To make sure that we're going to run this for loop 10 times. If we forget about this I, what do you think is going to be happen? If some students write this one without this statement, what would the result will be? Forever. We're going to keep printing this forever. Okay? You don't have the initialize, Java will say, where is I? Will not compile. Okay? If you don't have the initialization. Remember, I is live between these braces, between this one and this one. After this one, you cannot ask about I. That is the beauty of for loop. Because it allows you to declare I within it. And after you finish the for loop, I is disappeared. Here, no. I can use it after. Okay? But I cannot skip this one. This is very important initializations. Okay. Quickly, take half a minute. We don't have too much time. Just write how many times each for loop of these will be executed. It's supposed to be not difficult for you after all these introductions about for loop. So how many times? Just can say 10 seconds, 30 seconds, half a minute, okay? And give me how many times these for loop going to be executed. Okay, do you have answer for the first one? 5, 1, 4. Good. Now I ask you this as an exercise to create a for loop that will print this sequence to the user. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 7, then 3, 8, 13, 18, 23. I need you to come up with a for loop like this. A for loop that print to the user these values. Okay? Now, this is the questions. How many times this will be executed, and what is printed during each iterations? Okay? Any result? At least the first iteration. What we're going to see in the first iteration? So the first iteration, we're going to print x. Yes? That's 981. Then we have 6,561. And we have the, don't forget the last statement, this is not part of the for loop. We'll print again x. Now the thing here, if I ask here a print count, it will not, Java will not compile because count is not defined out of the for loop. But x is defined before, so we can have x. Okay. What about this one? What we're going to see? This is a nested for loop. What are you going to see on the screen? Quickly, because we have too many things today. At least the first iteration. What's the first iteration? One and one. The first iteration is, what do you think? What I made a mistake? Wrong? Okay, try it at home and make sure this is correct. Yeah, it seems. Okay. What about this one? It's the same as the previous one. Yeah? What's the difference between this one and this one? I start from 1 here, I start from 0 here. So we have this output is the same, yeah? It's weird. Okay, you check this at home and make sure you open some Android Studio and put these for loop and see exactly what will be printed and let me know if my answer is wrong. Okay? What about this one? We'll have this one, but we have the line. The good thing here is to know that whenever you don't open the brace and close it, each for statement assume there is only one statement inside the body. So inside the nested for loop, we assume only this statement going to be repeated, the first statement. But the second statement, it's there, some students get confused that the second statement is part of the for loop, which is not the correct. Because the for loop is containing by default one statement. If you need to include more statement inside the for loop, you need to have the braces open and closed. So in this case, we don't have open and close the braces, which means the for loop, the inner for loop, contains only one statement. And the second statement here is out of the for loop, will not repeated at all. It will be printed only once. Okay, here is another examples for you. Please, I give you the answer, but make sure this answer is correct. Okay, try these for loops at home and make sure you are mastering the for loop, while loop, if statements, switch statements, all of that. This is an exercise I like because I give questions on the lab test, many things like this, similar to these questions. So please look carefully to the questions before I give you the solution. Make sure you understand it, because 90% you will have a question the same on the lab test too. So the question is asking to sum the digits of an integer value that I provided to you, and you see the examples 29107. I need the summations of the digits. I need 2 plus 9 plus 1 plus 0 plus 7. The result of the summations is 19. Now, to be able to do this, I give you the hint. You need to use the remainder operators, the percentage, asking the remainders of the operations. So let us see the solutions. We have the header of the method, public static int, digit sum, and the end. So what do you understand from the header? Any something come to your mind by looking to this header? The method is static. That means I can call this method using the class name. I don't need to create an object, okay, to call this method because it's a static method, and it's received int, retain int. What's the signature for this method? If I ask you what is the signature of this method, can anyone tell me what's the signature of this method? This is the header. Now, you can see some people, they got confused between the header and the signature. This is the header of the method. Start with public, static, int, retain value, name, and the int as an argument. What is the signature of this method? Anyone? The argument? What do you mean? Give me the signature. The signature contains, that's right. The signature contains the name of the method. In this case, what is? Digit sum, presses, the type, the list of type of the input arguments. N is not part of the signature. Int, the type of the input argument. Int, so there is only one input, there's nothing more. So the name is digit sum, open the presses, then int, that's the signature. Inside it, I say int is equal to sum. Int sum is equal to 0. Then I do while loop. While x is greater than 0, keep doing this. So I open and I close. Sum plus n with the remainder of 10. So I always divide, take the remainder of division by 10. Because that is what is the ones digit, 10 digit, 1,000 digits, 1,000 digits, yes? So if you divide by 10, what do you see the remainder? If I give you 27 divided by 10, what's the remainder? 7. So you isolate the ones digit, yes? Then you keep the number, which is 10 divided by 10, which is the integer division. So if you have 27 divided by 10, what does n will be if I divide n divided by 10? What's the result? 27 divided by 10, integer division, this statement. This statement. N is 27 divided by 10. What will be n here? 2. Okay? Because always the integer division ignores the remainders. So from the first statement, I pick up the remainder, I add it to the sum, and in the second, I reset n. So n is the control for this for loop. Remember, I'm keeping modifying n, but the scope of all n is inside this method, and I will retain sum. Without this statement, if I forget to say retain sum, code will be compiled. No, why? Exactly, because I already make a contract between me and the compiler. I say the compiler, my method will retain something to you. And then at the end, I'm not retaining anything. It's not a good thing, yeah? So if I say to the compiler, I will retain integer, I should retain integer. Any question? Any question? Okay. So what this loop print, I will leave this for you. So this will print this and the same thing. You can see here, you see the for loops. I do the initialization before I do the increment inside the body. So things are the same. These two for loops are equivalent. Okay? And this is another for loops. Now, okay? Any question now about if statement and all these controls? Yeah, I didn't put the solutions. I left it for you. So that's okay. Good. Any other question? Okay, it's very important when you are using if statement and for loops to do how to do comparing data types. You see the primitive data type, we use it in the control. I, int I, all these examples. So sometimes you need to do the comparison with the float numbers. So if you have the float number or double number, avoid using equal sign. You need to make sure the difference between two double values are within the acceptable margin. If that is acceptable, you run the execution of some programs. So if you have a double or a float as a control for you, don't use equal because due to rounding problem, maybe 1.5 in this computer is the same as 1.5 in this computer, but in different architecture will not be the same. So you have to make sure the difference between two doubles are within the same margin. Sorry. How we can do this? We can rely on the math.absolute. That will retain the absolute difference without using a negative sign. So we take the double number f1 minus f2. If it's less than the tolerance value, we execute some statement and we say that the double f1 is the same as f2. Normally like 1 million or 1,000 0.0001, if the difference is that within that tolerance, you say. This is just a hint for you. Normally, if you are working with integers, it's okay to say equal or less than or equal. But if you are using with the doubles, you need to make sure the difference between the values, if you need to compare between f1 and f2 numbers are equal or not, to take the difference between these double numbers and make sure the difference is less than some tolerance value that is acceptable inside your applications or your app to say that f1 is the same as f2. Now, if you are sorry, if you are comparing between characters, remember that the characters are transferred to an ASCII code or some integer value inside your programs. So plus sign is less than the J capitals inside the programs. Yes, they are letters for you, but in terms of the computer, these are transferred to our programs, so we can have these comparisons. And this table is showing you what is the equivalent Unicode's value for each numbers, for each letters. So if you have a characters between 0 to 9, they start with the value of Unicode for 8 and will end at 57. If you have A capital up to Z capital, you start with the Unicode is 65 up to 90. So you can see that the character value 0 is less than the character value A capital. And also A small is start from Unicode 97 up to Z small, that is end at 120. So you can compare the characters because the character inside the computer, you can say A less than A small, A capital is less than A small in this case. Yes, this Unicode is 10. 10 is two characters, 1 and 0. So you are working as a string now. So 10 has two characters. So what is the Unicode for 1? 1 byte, and 0 is stored in another byte. Okay, good. So 10 is not a one Unicode character. 10 contains two characters, 1 and 0. So you have the Unicode for 1 and you have the Unicode for 0. Okay, so everybody agree now how we can compare doubles and characters, yes? No, you have to remember, whenever you are defining a string, it's a sequence of characters, you have to put double quotes. So now you are working with a string objects. Character is one single quote. Okay? Everything should be come together. Don't take the topic of this course as isolated topics. Everything are linked together, okay? Good. Now, characters or a string is not a character. A string is an object. How we can compare a string together? How we can make sure this string is equal to this string? There is an equals method. Equals is very powerful method. Whenever you define an object inside the Java, you have to visit this method and override it in the way to make two objects are equal or not. One of the things here is the string. Java experts say string is used very frequently in this. So we create that string type and we provide the equals method for the string. So whenever you have name1, name2 as a string object, you need to make sure that name1 is equal to name2. You don't use equal sign, equal. Use what? Names dot equals name2. So in this case, if name1 equals to name2, you will be printing this one the same. If you are using equal, name1 equal name2, remember this. You are comparing that if they are both stored at the same address in the memory. Most likely this will be evaluated false. Okay? So, to make sure the content of name1 string is equal to the name2 string, you have to use name1 dot equals name2. This will return true if and only if name1 is really the same content of name2. So, also some people, they are interesting to know if this string is less than the other string, or this object is less than the other objects. So we are using compare to. So name1 dot compare to name2 will return 0 if name1 is equal to name2. Will retain a negative value if name1 less than name2. Will retain a positive value if name1 is greater than name2. Whatever we discuss here for a string data type or a string class is also the same and valid for any other object you define in your apps. So let's say someone define a class of a student. You cannot say a student object 1 equal student object 2. This will evaluate it false. We're not checking for a comparison of the content of the students, if this is the same student or not. To make sure, you have to provide an equals method. You have to override it inside it. If you need to make sure this student is less than the other students, you may compare by the GPA. If this student's performance is greater than this student's. So you have to override compare to. But the string class is written by expert, Java expert. So we have this for us. The same methodology should be applied for any other classes you define in your app. So name1 is a string object, name2 is a string object. You need to compare these two string objects together. You cannot use less than or equal. You cannot use less than or equal or greater than or equal. You use a method called compare to. So if name1 is equal to name2, you're going to have integer value returned to you, 0. If the name is less than 1 is less than name2, you're going to have negative value. If name1 is greater than name2, you have the positive value. Oh, it's coming, the answer is here. It's a graphical representations. You can Google it and see what they mean by lexicographical orderings. So they look character by characters. Which character is less than the other characters? Once they see this string has a character less than the other character, we stop the comparison. We say this string is less than the other character. Let's say you put a capital 1, a string, and then you have a small 1, a string. So you have a string with 2 characters now. You want to say this character is less than this one, you look at the first characters, okay? And you compare between them based on Unicode, okay? once you are validate, and what's the Unicode? Look at the previous slide and make sure what is the value. So you can Google this one and make sure. We are comparing the string, characters and string based on the character set. Okay, that is what is called lexicographical orderings. Okay, in this case, if the name 1 compared to name 2 less than 0, that means we say the name 1 come first. Okay, and if name 1 compared to name 2 is equal to 0, we say they have the same name, the same content, the same list of characters in both these strings. Otherwise, name 2 is coming first. Okay? So the way that they compare the characters, that's the default way. If you would like to override it, you can override it, but that by overriding the method compared to in your applications. Okay? Yes, you try that. Yes. I don't think they look at the length. One of the things is the length, okay, maybe, okay. So they look at the possibility of the characters. Of course, if this small length maybe it's bigger than, you have to see the examples. You have to run an examples with different string, different length, okay. What I just give to him is 2 strings with the same length. Okay? If you want to give 2 different lengths, you try it and see. Okay? Okay. So, whenever you are using equal, you are asking if these 2 variables or belong to the object referring to the same object or not. To make sure that the objects are equal, you are using equals method. If you have 2 strings from the same class, now if you would like, when you write your class, you can redefine equals method based on the object. As a developer, you decide how you can make these 2 objects are equal to each other. Okay? Some people maybe say, oh, these students are equal to each other if their GPA is the same. So they are in the same orders in terms of compared to. In terms of equality, they say, okay, we're going to compare, because whenever you come to create a class inside Java, you always think about this. In terms of equality, I define class students. When I'm going to say this student is the same as this student, if I look maybe at the ID, if they have the same ID, I will say this is the same students. Then you can compare based on the ordering. Which student is going to come first? I'm going to order the students based on the name. I'm going to order the students based on the ID. I'm going to order the students based on the GPA. So all this, you need to come to your mind. Based on this, you override the method. Any question about comparing? So whenever we have if a statement that will look for equality between 2 strings, we should not use equal. We should use string dot equals. Okay? Okay. Now we go to quickly, we're gonna go to this topic, which is generating a random numbers. We have a class called random, and we can use this class. Most of the methods are static method. We can use this class to generate, for example, next integer. We retain random integers. We can retain next integer and we provide the maximum parameters. In this case, we retain an integer between 0 and the max, where the max value is excluded. And we can ask next doubles. We can retain any value between 0 and 1, where 1 is excluded. So, for example, to define a random inside your app, you say random, and you give the name for the variable, in this case RAND, equal a new. Always there is a new to create a new object of random variables. So we create a new random, and there is a no argument constructors. So in this case, we are creating a random object, and we can ask ran.next int, and we give 10 as a max. So we retain any value between 0 and 9. So the retained value will be 0, could be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. 10, you cannot see 10 because 10 is secluded, and you only retain integer value. You cannot see 1.5, okay? And random is part of Java utility. You can include it by name. You can say java.utility.random, or you can say import java.utility.star. So include all the classes. Here is an example where you can use the minimum and the maximum and change it. So to get a random number within the range of minimum and the maximum, add minimum to the result of next integer, which is the max minus the minimum plus 1. So let's say you are interested to have a random number between 5 and 10. So between 5 and 10, I need any random number between 5 and 10. To be able to do this, we are using next integer. We give what is the maximum is 10. That's the formula. 10 minus 5 plus 1. 10 minus 5 plus 1 is 6. So you give a number between 0 and 6, where 6 is excluded. Then you add an offset to it, which is 5. So in this case, you have a number between 0 and 10. Any question? If you would like to have a random number between 1 and 10, you do the same. So 10 minus 1 plus 1, which is give you 10. So you give a next int 10 plus 1. So that will guarantee that you will have a number between 1 and 10. Now, if I ask you based on the previous discussion, I need a number between 0 and 100 where inclusive. What should I use? I already defined a random object. Yes? 100 and, so we wrote 101, that's right. In the second one, we have 101 plus 1. And then we have here, take the difference between 17 and 4, put them here, and then you add 4. So this will guarantee that you have a random number between 4 and 17. Any question? Yes? No. For the first one, 100 will be, yes. Second one, to understand the second one, look at the first one. 0 is included here. 0 is not included here. So you're adding 1 to this, so to get rid of 0. Oh, this will be next one. You take 100 minus 1 plus, I think this should be 100. Okay? You are right. This should be 100 because that is the formula. 100 minus 1 plus 1, that will give you 100, plus 1, that will give you 1 up to 100. Okay? Any other questions? Okay. So we will give a quick introductions for the exceptions for the next time. So exception is very important. If you guarantee that you're going to run a program without any error, that's good, but most of the program and expert program, they cannot guarantee this. Sometimes you have unprotected situations that is coming out on fire. So I don't know what unexpected error is coming out, either from my machine or from my program. Oh, I guarantee my program is okay, so the machine maybe is not fit or compatible to run your program. So there's some always, as a developer, you're gonna come across some unexpected errors that happen during the execution of your app. So how we can do this? We have to make sure all the efforts or all the necessary effort from you as a developer to catch these unexpected errors and handle them. Okay? If you cannot handle them, that's on fire, so nobody can do anything for it. But you have to make sure you develop a robust app, okay, that can handle unexpected situations and prevent this app from crash. Now, exception, if you need to define it, is come to this definitions. It's a Java give you some signal abnormal behaviors. So the Java has this capability to signaling. Okay, we have some unaccepted. Like any patients on the hospital, there's some measurement. Okay, whenever there's something abnormal, you see the sounds or a flashing red. Okay, to the nurse, so the nurse can pay attention to this patient. It's the same thing. Java gives you this option to signal something abnormal is going on, and the exception is generated from your program or some external resources, that is hardware. These errors, you can catch them and handle them. If you don't want to handle anything, it's okay. Then everything will be handled by the Java by crashing your app. Okay? If you need to build a robust app, you have to do some extra effort in addition of programming the app to make sure that this app is robust enough and avoid it from crash. Now, keep in your mind, every public method should verify all the required preconditions before doing any real work and raise appropriate exception if some of these is violated. We agree that the preconditions is a responsibility for the user of the app. If you say, like in D3, you're going to see some exceptions there because you say, okay, I can accept up to 20 or 30 years. If you enter 25, I will not accept. If you enter 40 years, I will not accept, either 20 years or 30 years. So then you define what is the preconditions. If a user try to violate these preconditions, you're going to raise an exception to him to let him know he didn't enter the correct value. Okay, exception is a condition may have fatals, end up with terminating your app, or you can recover from this conditions, okay, and you can continue running your app by catching up the exceptions and recover these exceptions. There is a big diagram about the exception and where is the exception. It's not required from you in this course to know all these details. What is required is to know there is an exception, I can catch the exceptions, and also I can handle these exceptions, okay? I will continue discussion on the exception next time, okay?